much for this opportunity, and thank you to everyone who signed up and who participated in this session. A few housekeeping, please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. You can use the chat box or raise your hand if you have any questions. And if you're comfortable, you can also turn on your camera during the session. Um, and I will be looking up to the chat box if anyone has any questions. Please engage. And over to you, Erika. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Ajmal, and thank you so much for having me join today. So I might actually stop sharing screen first, so that we can have a little bit of an introduction session. So may I request everyone to raise their hand on the Zoom function? Can we all do that? Like just all raise your hand right now? Okay. So I would have a few questions, and I would like to see if the question I ask you fits your criteria. I want you to put your hand down. So it will be the opposite. All right. So once everyone's hand is up, we could start. All right. We have a few hands up. Good. Okay. Did everyone find the raise your hand function on Zoom? Yeah, got it. So I'll start right now, just in case. So my first question is that um, have you had breakfast today? That's my first question. If you've had breakfast, keep your hand up. Oh, a lot of you didn't have breakfast. I can see a lot of hands down. Okay. Um, my second question is that are you passionate about young people in peace building? If you are, keep your hands up. Okay, a lot of you are. And my last question is that are you looking forward for the discussion today? Okay, that's good. At least we have some hands up. So I'd like to introduce myself, just to have that a little bit of background on who I am speaking with you today. So my name is Erica. I originally am from the Philippines, but I'm currently based in Australia doing my research on young people's participation in peace building, focus in Southeast Asia. Been working with Ajmal on the peace and security agenda for quite some time. And I've also been working in different hats as, part of youth organizations, but also with UNICEF and the UN. So today, so now we can put our hands down. I'd also like um, to invite everyone to introduce themselves in the chat. I see my introduction is already included in the chat. So please say your name, your organization, and what why are you here today? I'd be really interested to find out like the reason of why you're joining this session personally for you. If it's just to kind of gain more knowledge, gain more background, that's also really great. If you're feeling bored and want to try something new, that's also very understandable. So please feel free to use the chat box to create that space for interaction. And then all throughout, hopefully, if we have questions or you would like to share, just feel free to raise your hand and I would give the mic to you. Anyone can actually unmute themselves. Or if you have like questions specifically on a specific slide or topic, just feel free to also like raise your hand. All good? Um, just feel free to also use the thumbs up function of the Zoom. And hopefully, we'll make this a little bit more interactive than you just listening to me speaking. So we have Abida, who did law and politics and here to improve the knowledge about the program. Really great. So yeah, we'll go through the chat as well. But because we have a lot of things to talk about, we want to make it more interactive. So I'll just go ahead with the topic. I know youth, peace, and security. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have not. Maybe I could just see within the maybe do a reaction if you've heard of the youth, peace, and security agenda. So, do we have anyone who's familiar? Is it or is this all new for you? All right. So, seems like mostly it's new. Um, so before we go to the main agenda itself, shall we start with some definitions? So first, let's talk about violence. So violence is often seen as conflict. It's often seen as like interchangeable, but it's actually not conflict. So there is one of the like we call him the father of peace building, Johann Galtung. He developed this typology of violence or like the definition of violence. So first we have direct violence. So direct violence is often seen as something that's visible. Um, it's when what most people identify with the meaning of the term violence. So it means that it could be also psychological, it could be verbal violence like insulting, it could be, let's say, war, it could be destruction and hate speech and all of those. And then we have another type of violence, which is the structural violence. The structural violence are the one that we cannot see with our naked eye. It is less visible. It can be a little bit more subtle in identifying and grasping. So it's usually understood as indirect violence caused by an unjust structure. So this means that we're looking at institutions, we're looking at systems that generate discrimination, inequality, for instance, having like access to rights and services. So this is what we call the structural violence. One example, for instance, is we have unjust laws that do not give the same access or rights to certain citizens. Like, for instance, there's not equal rights for men and women, or there's not equal rights for like different people in different economic system. Um, One example that I could think of is like during the apartheid in South Africa, where youth in political participation have like 73%. In a lot of countries have age restrictions. So young people could not, exercise their right to engage within the government. And then finally, we also have the cultural violence. The cultural violence is the legitimization of violence on the basis of cultural norms, traditions, and values. So, this is often the invisible form of violence as it relates to people's attitudes, feelings, their values, their norms, which is anchored like deeply within society. So, for instance, this could be seen as, let's say, saying a joke that is funny for you, but it's actually demoralizing for someone else. For instance, telling that, you're a woman, you should always be in the kitchen, something like that, or um, saying jokes about the songs or the sayings that are traditional. Those are seen as cultural violence. And this actually are beliefs that creates discrimination, it creates mistrust, it like promotes hate and polarization that justify direct violence, and it also justifies the structural violence. So I know these are like we're at the beginning, but I'm giving you like very deep terminologies. But let me know if you have any questions or clarifications in terms of like these types of definitions. And yeah, Ajmal, just let me know if I'm going too
Yeah, of course,
deep.
I will.
But yeah, Yeah. But yeah, these are just like, just to explain to you that violence does not equate to conflict itself. It is not equal, but rather violence is one way to possibly managing conflict. Because we often say conflict is bad, but sometimes conflict is actually something good, depending on how we use it. So, for instance, conflict is different from violence because it is a disagreement between two parties. It could be two people, two groups, two countries, or even more. It is more of like a contradiction in terms of the goals or what you're trying to reach. So that's why I want to say that conflict per se is not negative, it could be positive. For instance, if one person and another person have two different ideas, but then you're able to communicate and discuss these ideas, it's still conflict, but you're able to work within that conflict and create something positive and something new. And I think that's just one thing that we need to kind of like think about when we say conflict. When we deal with, there are different approaches, which I'll actually discuss later in terms of dealing with conflict. So here I want to show you like just the difference between conflict and violence. Conflict is neutral, it's not necessarily negative. Violence is negative itself. So this is how you deal with the conflict that you have pushed yourself to do violence. Conflict is unavoidable. We all have our different thoughts, ideas, perception. Violence is avoidable. And as much as possible, that's why we're all here. We would like to avoid violence. And then conflict is a part of life. When not managed, this can lead to violence. So again, it's very neutral, but then violence should not be part of life. This is not normal. This is socially constructed, and this is learned through the environment, meaning that violence is something that's being pushed upon, depending of where the conflict is being how the conflict is being addressed. And then conflict, when managed constructively, can lead to positive outcomes. And that's when I said when two amazing ideas come together, then you'd have something positive come out of it. While violence, it's destructive. So we these are the different approaches that I would like to kind of share about what how we deal with conflict. So this is more of like terminologies like conflict management, resolution, transformation. And for me personally, I would incline towards conflict transformation as an aspect, as we believe, or I believe that, you know, the essence of conflict being neutral, natural, and the opportunity to provide something positive out of these conflicts. So, for instance, conflict management, this umbrella term refers to any efforts undertaken to settle a conflict and to get the conflicting parties involved in that process. So, that might be through dialogue, that might be through negotiation. So, there's different ways of managing these conflicts. Um, conflict is to aim to resolve the conflict by addressing its root causes and identifying possible solutions to the conflict at stake. So, what are the solutions that we want to do? And the resolution is often a buy in of both parties or all the parties involved. And then conflict transformation is more of the process of transforming the relationships, the interests, the needs, the behaviors, social context to bring about peace. So I'd like to ask, has anyone here actually experienced any of these conflict management processes? Do we have any examples or anyone who has experienced it in the past? If not, it's okay as well. But it also could be you may think that you haven't done conflict management before, but you've actually had. For instance, you and your brother or sister would like to have the piece of bread that your mom cooked. but there's only one piece of bread left. And that is the conflict. You only have one bread. I'm sure that you maybe could have thought about it and said, like, I would like to have that piece of bread. But then sometimes you talk with your sibling and say, like, we can share and split the bread in two. So that in itself is already conflict management. So we have Suhaila. Would you like to share?
Yes, first, hello for all. I hope that everybody is doing okay. I don't know if it counts actually,
Mhm.
but me and my brother, as we live in a house, so I thought that as I do the houseworks with my mom, so he should do that as well because we are in the same age and we go to school and we do the same things, but he doesn't do the houseworks, but I do. And I could change this. Within my family. And I think this is the conflict management.
Yep, exactly. That's actually a really good example. In terms of how you deal with that conflict. So the management there is like, are you creating a space for communication for you and your brother? In the household, is there that kind of discussion and dialogue? So exactly, that's a really good example of conflict management. And thank you so much for sharing. So now let's go in terms of what peace is, in terms of the definition when it comes to like theories and like general knowledge in terms of peace. So I'd like to also base it again to from Johan Galton. So he has kind of two typologies of peace. First is positive peace. When we talk about positive peace, it's more of the lasting peace that's built on sustainable structures and institution, but also societal attitude that foster peace. So this includes like everyone being able to get their basic rights, like the rights to education, the rights to like speak up, the rights to, let's say, employment and all of those things that would make it easier for you to kind of live in a society. And then negative peace is defined by the absence or like defined by having war or violence. So this negative peace is what we talked about, the different direct and like physical violence that we've discussed earlier. So, in terms of approaches to peace, this is a lot, but I'd like us to focus a little bit more in terms of the peace building and the peace making. So, for instance, in peacekeeping is actually ending direct violence. So at the UN, you would hear peacekeeping operations a lot. So this would be deployed military forces to end the direct violence. Then we have peacemaking, which is more changing the attitudes towards dialogue and mediated negotiations. So this is looking into addressing the cultural violence. So for instance, when we hear about peace processes, so this is where it comes in, the peacemaking. The peace building is the structural transformation of conflicts' root causes. So, in the political, economic, and social spheres, so there is that kind of linkages between all of them for sure. True peace is more of the participatory, nonviolent process that aims to prevent any form of violence. And this also, true peace is what we aim for here is to respect human rights and aids the maintenance of non-violent human interaction. And then we have just peace. Of course, this is what we want to attain. It is built on three pillars. So, first is the adaptive process and structure of human relationships. Um, and then the second one is societal infrastructure that actively responds to conflict by nonviolent means. And then the third is a system that allows for permanency and interdependence of relationship and change. So these are just a few ways of approaches to peace. We can come in at any point. And for sure, young people are present in all of these different approaches to peace. So now, from my research and several other research, we've asked young people what peace is for them. And it really varies depending on the context and the experience. It means peace processes, it means like racial divides, like ending racial divides. It means having, a resilient community that's able to surpass disasters. It means equal access to healthcare. So it really is very broad. And all of this is actually saying that peace for young people is actually having everyday experience of peace. So that I would take a little bit of break from speaking, I'd like to ask you, what is peace for you? So I'd like to open the floor to anyone who would like to share in terms of what peace is for you. Yeah, go ahead, Suhaila, and then we'll have Tamana to go next.
Okay, as I am a POEG player, Peace on Earth game by 2013. We have 7 peace actions, which the first one is empowering ourselves as an agent of change. I believe this because for bringing change and for being an agent of change, especially in countries like Afghanistan, first we have to empower ourselves, and then we have to share this empower to the people like ourselves, to our siblings or our family or our community. And I work, I'm a feminist, and I believe in the equality of the women and men, not in terms of biological aspects, but in terms of the equality, that they have the same rights in workplace, in education, and everything at all, because they are all human. I think the gender equality really matters in every society, not only in Afghanistan, but also all over the world. I see still that there is gender inequality, and it really matters. For example, whenever that I have read the book We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, she cleared that like gender equality is something like we say that the grasses are green and the weather is blue. So it's not something strange that all the people, whenever that we say we are feminist, and they're like shocked. I think that everybody has to know what is really feminist, what is a feminist, and what is gender equality, and what is peace building. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhaila. And definitely very important point that like peace also means having gender equality. Tamana?
Hello for everyone. I hope all of you doing well and to be healthy. In my idea, peace for me or for us is true peace, like education, going outside, using from technology in all of them is making with human right, and we can use them, we can improve with them, and this is um, uh, kind of peace.
Thank you so much. We have, I'm sorry, it's
You're
Samsung.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tamana. And the next one we have Akbar. Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll end from Akbar, we'll have Suida, and then Aryan, and then Sumaya. And then we'll go on to the next discussion. Akbar, go ahead.
Akbar, if you're speaking, you're muted.
There we go.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Hello. Oh, would you like to share what peace is for you?
Yes, thank you so much. This point is very beautiful points that I've catch from your speaking, that peace, what is peace, and what is peace for me, and that it's very good thing that I've everybody experienced, that they go and outside and they experience from everything that they have challenge with together, and it's not the pieces points. But I have experienced that when I studying and catching some things from the books, and then I explain those things from my and also I explain those things for my friends and my classmates. This makes me very peaceful, and also I have another experience that when I go in the communities and participating in the beautiful and very positive the communities and like this program, I feel very peace, and this is also the one of them points and very good sign of the pieces that all of the young and youth people experience, and this was one of my feels, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akbar. And yeah, similar to earlier as well, it's the freedom to also be going outside, having human rights. So thank you so much for sharing. Soiba?
Um, Hello, thank you so much to give me this chance to speak. Actually, for me, I have two way to approach the peace for me, because when I was younger, just before the return Taliban, the return this current situations, I always think about the negative approach of peace. I always dreamed one day we end this conflict, because I lost my really near relatives in the conflict, even my uncles, and I always like to end this war, like military war. But currently, I changed my thoughts, and I believe peace for me is to reach a situation, a society with social justice. I mean, remove the all labor, which different one part of society to others. That could be the gender labels or ethnic labels and all labels, and we have actually social justice in our society. That is peace for me.
Thank you so much. And really important point of like raising social justice in order to have peace. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ariane?
Hi, Erica. I just had a question
Yeah,
about
go
peace,
ahead.
about the slide before, and I just wanted to know how Western countries could contribute to peacemaking developments through youth and peacemaking and true peace in different developing countries where there is conflict.
Oh, yeah, I think you got caught off. But I guess one way is actually to show solidarity in terms of raising awareness of the conflict that's happening. Because a lot of Western countries are like, in terms of the news, is very focused on what's happening in country, but also making sure that the information that's being shared is correct. So connecting with, let's say, local organizations that are based in, let's say, other countries that you'd like to raise awareness to where conflict or violence is actually being done is really important. So, yeah, like for instance, for me, I am currently based in Australia, but I connect with other colleagues and get information and news and see how I could support specifically in their own context rather than, um, talking about what's just being said in mainstream media. So I guess that's one way. And also one example actually that I could share is like the National Action Plan of Finland, which is more externally facing. So that could be an example that we could see. Later, I'll actually share a little bit more about it on how in current like fragile or vulnerable settings could support young people from others. So yeah, Tamana, hopefully I answered. And if I missed anything as well, please feel free to also come in.
No worries, you answered.
Yeah, thank you. Tamana?
Hello, Erica. How are you?
Hello. Good, how are you?
I hope all feel good. I want to say, what's peace actually? Peace means living without fear, without violence, or without any conflict. And it's when it's created, when we respect, when we understand, or when we calmly solve our problems and work together and make create or make a good world for us. And this is actually peace.
Thank you so much, Tamana, and definitely agree with you as well. Mitra, we'll end with Leah Kat, just so that we can go on to the next slides as well. Mitra, over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello to you. I think my opinion is about peace. It's very clear that peace is our mind, our peace mind, our peace life. Peace, the meaning of that we can live as we wish, as we want. Peace means that we have a right choice without that we see the gender. We can do the work. We can go to university. It's will be we all be safe in our country. The meaning of is clear in the situation of in Afghanistan like today we have in that, and living in our country, our freedom, our choice. Without that, we are the girls, we are boys. It's the meaning of the peace.
Thank you so much, Mitra. Nasir?
Thank you to you.
Hello, Erica and everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me, Erica?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Good. First of all, I extremely sorry for joining late. Yeah, 12 minutes later, I joined the session. I'm happy to have you here all. I learned a lot. Just I have a quick question about peace. You already mentioned about negative peace. So, in my opinion, peace means stay positive, stay motivated, stay energetic. When there is peace, there is no violence, there is no conflict. So, let me know how it's possible to have negative peace. I couldn't get it well.
Okay. How it is possible to get negative peace? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there negative peace?
So yes, so negative peace, again, I'm going back to this slide just for clarification. Negative peace is actually defined by the absence of war and violence. And generally, how young people define peace is actually the attainment of positive peace. So it really depends on the different contexts on how peace is being defined. So that's why now I'm asking everyone, like, what is peace for you, and how are we going to achieve peace in your certain context is going to be very different across each person's experience and context. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you.
All right. So, um, moving on, and thank you so much for sharing your definitions of peace. It really just shows how the variety of experiences and our backgrounds and our lived life defines what we mean by peace. So I want to go back to why Youth for Peace. So, Youth for Peace is just the hashtag that's being used to raise the awareness in terms of young people actually engaging into peace and security discussions. So, mostly, the rationale of why young people should be engaged in peace is because of the youth demographics. When we talk about the youth demographics, is because of the population of young people. Everyone knows that the largest population of young people today is actually the largest in history. So when young people are engaged, we can actually change the course of how things would go on forward. So the youth demographics is also being seen as something important because it is often equated as an economic gain in a lot of countries. So when there is investment in young people, that's the reason a lot of people invest in young people, is because they can get economic gains later on. However, I would like to also argue that beyond the economic gains of young people, that young people's engagement within these types of discussion is because it is a right for young people to engage. Our right to kind of be engaged in the processes that actually affects our lives is really important. So rather than having just simply the argument of youth demographics or youth bulge, we also advocate for youth as peace builders and youth as peacemakers. So one, why would I like to kind of emphasize on why we should veer away from just the economic aspect of young people? It's because I would like to see young people engage as a basic right, and that's why we need to have a seat at the table. However, what are the things that are actually stopping from making this happen? It's because there are narratives when we talk about young people that is kind of dominant in the discussions that's happening, especially at the institutional and government level. When we talk about young people are often seen as victims that need to be supported. Young people are often seen as perpetrators that need to be stopped. However, young people are less often seen as peace builders. Hence, young people are not included in decision-making process. So why is it problematic? Because first, there's no supporting mechanism directly for young people. It's always super difficult to get flexible funding. There is no a systematic way to actually engage young people within these institutional system. And then the next one is the youth bulge component, which I was discussing earlier and looking at the demographic dividend. So when we talk about young people in that economic sense, we kind of forget young people in the peace building sense. So those should actually go hand in hand. And then, as we mentioned earlier, like education, employment, those are important things. Those are often seen as something as the basic right of young people that we don't have. And then we also have that hard-fisted law enforcement or security approaches. By that, let's say how you're being surveillanced in the different channels, social media, or things where your privacy is actually not being protected, and young people engaging and speaking out are not being protected. So those are the narratives that we would like to kind of debunk and say young people are peace builders. We're here and we want to engage and discuss um, how we could be able to reach the positive peace or the sustainable peace that we want to reach. So one thing that I actually would like to go back to is how everyone who shared earlier talked about the gender stereotyping and how gender equality is really important when it comes to peace building. So when we talk about young men, these are the narratives that I want to share in terms of how, the stereotype is. When it's young men, it's often they're violent, they're threats, they're, a big problem to society. And then young women are often seen as, uneducated, they're victims, they're weak. But that's actually not the case. We should not forget that young women actually make up a lot of the population when it comes to the peace and security processes. It could be starting from the home, out in the community, and even beyond. Sometimes young women even are engaged within armed forces and armed groups. And that's the kind of mindset that we would like to kind of push, is that like men and women could either be violent or peaceful. So we should be able to have that kind of equal viewing when it comes to young people and young women within these kinds of setting. So yeah, I just wanted to really put in that gender component to it. So in terms of these parts, so this is actually the first part of our session, which we talked about the different basic meanings. But in totality, I want the key takeaway from this first section to be that the vast majority of young women and young men are not involved in violence, and neither are the majority at risk of participating in violence. Because of the stereotypical view of young people and young women, there is that negative effects on how young people are engaged in terms of the programming, the initiatives, the projects. Those are all affected when we have that lens of stereotype. We should focus actually on the minority, and they are the one that actually miss out on the peace building initiatives and contributions that young people are actually doing. So we need to stop and act on these stereotypes and really change the old understanding of youth that are troubled or problematic, but rather look at young people at a positive lens. Because I know all of us are here today is because we want to impact change and we want to contribute to building peace and reaching peace. And that there actually is a growing body of researches and evidence that really shows that young people as negative or violent populations of society is not true. And this is actually one of the research that I am doing at the moment. So, on that end, do we have any questions? So, I would like to thank everyone who had shared their meaning of peace in the chat box as well. So, I really appreciate it and thank you so much. And inner peace. I'm really glad someone mentioned that. That's one thing that actually we should really continue building and really continue working on. So now we know the basic foundation or the basic definition and concept when it comes to peace, violence, and conflict. I'd like to introduce the Youth Peace and Security Agenda. So I'd like a little bit of show of hands. I've asked this earlier, while we had our introduction. Who here has heard or read about or worked on the Youth Peace and Security Agenda? Maybe we can see a show of hands. I'll give a few seconds. Oh, of course, Ashma. Anyone else? Okay, we have a few. Wasi, which is good. If you haven't, then you're in luck because, we're gonna talk about it today. So, the path to a global agenda. So, the Youth Peace and Security Agenda, it is not new. I want to premise that it has been there for a long time, but as a formal agenda, it is new. But I want to mention that young people throughout history have been engaged within peace and security discussions and also in state building or like building peace in different contexts. If you look at your history, you can see a lot of it is based on the youth movements of your country. So, for this agenda, I'd like to focus on the new or the contemporary part and the formalized framework that we have now at the international level. So there are a lot of young people that really engaged in terms of the Youth Peace and Security Agenda. I'd like to show a short timeline. So as I mentioned earlier, like it's gone beyond, but this is just like more of the big milestones that we have when it comes to the Youth Peace and Security Agenda. So for instance, from 2000 to 2012, there has been several workshops that talked about youth and peace building. There's been growing academic engagement and research, as well as teaching in this topic. There was the formalization of the Interagency Working Group on Youth Participation in Peacebuilding, which was later renamed to the Global Coalition on Youth Peace and Security in 2018. In 2013, there is the first ever UN Secretary General Envoy on Youth, who was from Jordan. And then from then, there was a push towards really formalized agenda on youth peace and security. So going to 2015, where we had the first Global Forum on Youth Peace and Security that was held in Amman, and then the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution on Youth Peace and Security 2250, which is the first ever resolution on youth participation in peace and security. In 2017, there was a progress study that was mandated from this UN Security Council resolution. 2018, we had the results of that research, which led to the adoption of the second Security Council resolution related to the Youth Peace and Security Agenda, which is the 2419. And this one actually calls for the increasing role of youth in negotiating and implementing peace agreements. And then 2018, we also had the UN Youth Strategy, where the fifth priority is actually on peace and resilience building. 2019, we had the first international symposium for peace processes, and this happened online because it was during COVID time. And then 2020, we had the first UNSG's report on youth, peace, and security. I'll go through all of this in detail later, but I just wanted to show you basically that there has been a lot going on in the past few years, and this year will actually be the 10th year. So these are just the big milestones in terms of looking at how the agenda has gone through. But I want to highlight actually in this slide is that throughout all of this process, young people have been engaged and have been pushing for this agenda in different means and in different levels. So I've been talking a lot about the United Nations Security Council. So I want to kind of explain as well what the UN Security Council is. I know some of you might have heard of them. Some of you might have, um, are not familiar, but the UN or the United Nations Security Council, or sometimes we use an acronym, which is UNSC. They are composed of 15 member states. So member states meaning the members of the UN or countries that are part of the UN, where there are 5 permanent members, which means they never leave the Security Council. And they have veto powers. Veto power meaning they can say no to a resolution that's being passed in the council. So the 5 permanent members are China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US. And then, in addition to the 5 permanent members, there are 10 non-permanent members and elected for 2-year terms by the General Assembly. However, they do not have veto powers. So this is actually like one of the main organs, let's say, of the UN. And then we have the General Assembly, the Secretariat, the International Court of Justice, and the Economic and Social Council. Those are the 4 other main organs. However, I would like to focus more on this, the UNSC, because I would like to share the weight of what it means to have the first ever framework on youth, peace, and security. So, we talked about the UN Security Council resolution on youth, peace, and security, which is UNSCR 2250. So, this one is adopted resolutions that are relevant to international peace. And to be adopted, a resolution must receive at least 9 votes out of the 15, and it cannot be vetoed by any of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So, meaning that the UNSCR 2250 on youth, peace, and security was actually a unanimous decision of all members of the Security Council. That means that they all recognize that young people have a positive role to play in international peace and security. It means that having this resolution actually puts young people in the agenda, that we are recognized as partners and as active players within the architecture when it comes to peace building at the international level, but it also trickles down to the regional, country, and community level as well. So, in terms of what the UNSCR 2250 is on youth, peace, and security, these are the 5 main pillars. So, first, participation. This talks about young people's engagement and participation are taken into account in decision-making processes, from the negotiation, prevention of violence, to peace agreements. So all throughout the system of peace processes, young people should be engaged. Protection. Protection is actually something that's really important, especially for a lot of peace builders, to ensure that young people's lives are protected and that they receive their human rights and that they receive their rights despite them being active players within these areas. Prevention is, of course, really important as well. It's supporting young people to prevent violence in promoting the culture of tolerance and intercultural dialogue, or promoting the culture of peace, as what we'd call in Southeast Asia. Partnerships, this means to engage young people as equal partners within peace and security discussions. Disengagement and reintegration, meaning the investment in youth affected by armed conflict through employment opportunities and inclusive labor policies and education to promote the culture of peace. So these are the 5 main pillars. You can work on several of these pillars at the same time. You can focus on one, but I just wanted to show that what is within this UNSCR 2250. So, I would like to share what are the frameworks. We talked about the UNSCR, so there are actually 3 that's focused on the youth, peace, and security agenda. I mentioned earlier the first one, which was on 2015, which is called UNSCR 2250. So this is the first one, and all the pillars that I mentioned earlier is under this Security Council resolution. The second one is 2419. So this one reiterates the first resolution, also really focuses on the inclusive representation of youth in the negotiation and implementation of peace agreements. It also requests the UN Secretary General to report on the implementation of the first 2 resolutions, and also strengthens the language in terms of protection. And then finally, the last resolution we have from 2020 is 2535. And this one actually establishes the Youth, Peace, and Security agenda as a permanent agenda in the UN Security Council. So that means that the UN Security Council should be discussing and monitoring how the Youth, Peace, and Security agenda is being implemented. So this provides concrete steps for the operationalization for the YPS agenda. I'll be sharing the resources later. You can look at it at your own time. But also it requests the Secretary General to submit a biannual report on the implementation of the YPS resolutions. So why is it important for me to kind of like introduce the UNSCR agenda on YPS? It's because these are actually resolutions that you can use to leverage the work that you're doing for your engagement within peace processes. So these are actually a few ways that I think would be really useful. It could be like, while the UNSCR are for actually member states to implement the resolution at the national level, but that means that youth and civil society can still engage within these processes. So you can create initiatives and collaborate with stakeholders already working within this area. You can engage your local level organizations. You can contextualize these agenda, for instance, translating it into like Dari or Pashto. You can also like have specific needs in terms of like I've mentioned the 5 key pillars, but 5 key pillars might not all be, you know, implemented within your context. And also using this to kind of making the case for you to be able to work within this space as well. So yeah, I guess that's it on the UNSCR. Do we have questions on this agenda? Or are we clear for now? I know it's a lot. We only have 1.5 hours, so I'm really bombarding you with a lot of things. But of course, you can like come back to this and then like have more discussion later on.
And just,
All right. Yeah,
sorry, Erika,
go
just to
ahead.
add, like we have also translated the resolution into two languages, Dari and Pashto. So
Oh,
I have posted the link in the chat box. So like the participant can go and read about the resolution. I have also copied and pasted the work of EPT and also some research that we have done toward this resolution in Afghanistan that the young people participated. So you can go back and read all the details. Over to
yeah.
you, Erika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajmal. As I mentioned, contextualization. It's really important to really see. And now you already have it in Dari and Pashto. So, moving on. For other resources, I'd like to share a little bit in terms of the findings from the Secretary General's report. So, the Secretary General had already reported on YPS twice. He's going to report it again this year. So I think it's really relevant for us to be talking about this because one thing that we could do as young people is actually share the things that we've been working on and the perspectives that we have to be included in this report so that we can have the member states and the international community actually work on the issues and challenges that we've been facing. So, for instance, the first report, it focuses more on the structural barriers. And this came out after the progress study that happened that was mandated by the first resolution. The second report, of course, happened while COVID, the pandemic era, but also it focused as well on issues around climate change. It focuses a lot on the shrinking civic spaces since a lot of people are being targeted because of the online components as well. So I would suggest reading these two reports and happy to share them all after as well. And the third report again will be this year. There could be possibilities for young people to really engage and put in feedback on what they want to be included within this report. So, one thing I'd like to share is as well like YPS relevant UN instruments and tools. I won't stay long on this slide, but I just wanted to mention it so that you would have ideas like what other areas is actually working. So we have the Peace Building Commission or PBC, which is the intergovernmental advisory board that supports peace efforts in conflict affected countries. So it's composed of 31 member states elected by the General Assembly. I told you like earlier about the different bodies within the UN, the Security Council and the Economic and Social Council, plus top financial contributing countries and top troop contributing countries. So troop contributing countries meaning those that contribute to the peacekeeping operations. So this actually provides a platform for experience sharing and discussions relevant to peace and security. So for instance, there was a CSO UN dialogue that happened in December. Ajmal was there, where there was discussion about, how the peace building architecture would be reformed and making sure that young people's voices are included within those discussions. So that's one example of that kind of engagement. In 2021, the Peace Building Commission also developed their strategy action plan on youth and peace building. And the percentage of the meetings where young people have actually been engaged within these briefings, it went from like 5.4% in 2020 to 44.4% in 2021, which is actually a big significant jump. And then we have the Secretary General's Peace Building Fund. So this is more of the financial instrument in terms of funding different initiatives. But this is actually very tricky as well, because you need to have like a good financial kind of let's say, system and institution in place. This is actually very tricky because it's not that flexible to youth organizations, but they are trying to create that kind of flexibility and having a gender and youth promotion initiative focused kind of programming. So I just thought of sharing that in case, there is any like ideas or interest in terms of tapping into these resources. Despite the difficulties, they are there. And other resources, so we can share the slides later on. These are mostly the resources that you can actually tap into when it comes to youth peace and security. I will just be providing you with the overview, but if you want to go deeper into like the different aspects, the different technicalities, I know what I'm saying is already very technical, but there could be deeper technicalities within, this whole institutional framework. Here are some of the primers and resources that are available and that are free resources that you can tap into. I know Ajmal can share a few more resources that may be more contextualized in your context, so please feel free to read them on your own time as well. I mentioned earlier about national action plans. So national action plans are being done in country, and these are actually the plans for country to implement the YPS agenda. As you see here, these are just four. A lot of action plans are still in the works at the moment. So we have the Finland, the Nigerian, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Philippines Action Plan. So as you can see, I know someone asked earlier about, how developed nations could support other countries. So the Finland one would actually be a good example that you can look at in terms of what the priorities are. So for the Finland, it's really outward facing rather than within, where they have really focused on supporting initiatives of other youth organization and youth-led organization and initiative that's happening around the youth peace and security agenda. The Philippines, for instance, is a lot of focus on the on the south of the Philippines, where they have their own action plan in their own region in the Bangsamoro, which is South Philippines. So these are just some examples. You can also look at them online. They're available, and for you to kind of like see what a national action plan may actually look like in your own country. So, coordination mechanisms. These are just a few of several coordination mechanisms. So there's the joint UNFPA PBSO Secretariat on YPS. And they're the one like really engaging on YPS at the UN level. Then we have YPS focal point system within the UN. And while this is not like really all throughout the different UN entities, it is highly encouraged to have like YPS focal points all throughout. There is the Global Coalition on Youth Peace and Security. Ajmal is part of this as well, where it's a mix of UN entities, youth-led organizations, but also civil society organizations to come together and discuss how to move forward. And there's also different task forces relating to how the YPS agenda is being implemented. The group of friends is actually member states that are strong allies and advocates for the YPS agenda. Currently, there are 27 members of the group of friends of YPS, chaired by Jordan. And then in Asia, there's the Asia Pacific Thematic Group on YPS, that's being chaired by UNDP and UNOY at the Asia Pacific level. So there's different mechanisms. This mechanism in itself of having several Afghan youth come together is its own mechanism for YPS engagement. So I mentioned earlier that, 2025 is the 10th anniversary of the YPS agenda. And I feel like it's really a good milestone to reach in terms of like where we are now, where we should be, given that it's the 10th year. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in this changing climate and the political climate that we have. So I guess it could be an opportunity for everyone to kind of like revisit, like, why do we have the YPS agenda and how we should actually be pushing forward for it. So I just like to share this like really quick summary video. Let me see if it plays. Oops. Yeah, it's not playing on my end, but given that we don't have enough time, I'll share the link of this video later on. So, I think we can go to Youth for Peace in Action. But before I move forward, I'd like to ask if there are any questions. Let me look at the chat box as well. Yes, I will definitely share the slides and the recording. Ajma will share. But for now, do we have any questions regarding the agenda? There are some points that, are not clear. I know this is a very quick overview of a very like heavy topic. So yeah, please feel free to kind of like interrupt and ask questions in case there are any. All right. So no questions for the meantime. So let's see in the next ones. Yeah. So challenges and opportunities. So I thought I'd be nice to kind of like see the action of where it's at. So in terms of the YPS agenda being on its 10th year, first is there's still the lack of institutional mechanisms to channel young people's view and make voices be heard. While there is a resolution or an international framework that we have, there's still that challenge that it's not really being implemented all throughout yet. There is a lack of familiarity within the YPS agenda and the limits for opportunities for engagement. A lot of people still don't know that the YPS agenda exists. So I feel like these types of discussion that we're having now is really important so that we can say that this international framework exists, so we should actually be working on it. And the third challenge that's being faced is that the generalized stereotype for young people is still being used. That young people are inexperienced or are perpetrators or victims of violence, which actually inhibits the meaningful engagement. So we should do our best to really change that kind of narrative when it comes to young people. And now, well, those are the negative and challenges. Let's look at the opportunities, which are actually linked to those challenges as well. So we should be able to build on working with and for young people and leveraging already existing mechanisms that work and engage with youth. So that's actually the minimum that we should actually build on. So I shared with you the different mechanisms that we had earlier, from the global coalition to the regional ones, and the way that young people could engage in CSO and UN discussions. So those are mechanisms that actually already exist, and we should actually build on them and make it even better to kind of reach out to be able to reach more young people. Next is leveraging the UN Security Council Resolution 2250. resources and expertise already available in your region or in your context. So the reason, again, in addition to the slide that we mentioned earlier about how we can use it, it's really important to raise awareness because a lot of our governments do not know that there is this Security Council resolution, and that if it is a resolution that's been passed, that means that the governments should be able to implement it in their own context. And then again, linking to the earlier, the final opportunities to raise awareness on the UN Security Council resolution and build and strengthen the capacity of young people to be able to use this agenda. Hence why we're actually having this discussion that we have now. So in a nutshell, YPS agenda is about tackling the stereotypes and the policy myths that young people are perpetrators or victims, but actually say that young people are already working in peace building, as all of you had mentioned earlier as well. Addressing the violence of exclusion, meaning having to make sure that young people are meaningfully engaged or included within political and peace building processes. It's beyond just having employment, but also skilling young people to be able to participate meaningfully in their own way, having access to education, the central role of gender identities for YPS, which a lot of you also mentioned about like the gender equality, dealing with injustice and human rights, which was mentioned earlier as well, and the disengagement and reintegration opportunities should be given to young people, thus reaching the everyday peace that we all long for. This is another video, but I don't think it can play again. But yeah, I guess that's the end of my slide. And I want to take this opportunity and give the floor to you if you have any questions or if you have any reflections or key takeaways from this discussion. I know that it's been a long hour and a half, but of course, yeah, let's make it a little bit more interactive so it doesn't be just me talking. Oh, yes, Hashim. You have a question?
Hello, everyone. Hello,
Hi,
Erika. How are you
Hashim.
doing?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for your time and your effort. So I have some questions.
Mhm.
My first question is that in a country like Afghanistan, that there's no governmental stability and they operate behind doors, closed doors. How can we participate in decision makings? Is there any possibility?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about like different contexts of how participation and engagement can be done. Given that the context is really difficult in terms of engaging, I guess that's one of the challenges that has to be faced. In the past, before everything kind of like reached the current stage that it was in now, there was a little bit of youth participation in the peace processes that was happening. But given the changes, there are still a lot of young people that are actually pushing to kind of like change the system and promulgate peace. So one example I could give specifically in your context is Ajmal's organization and the team that's working on this, that's trying to raise awareness that this is the case that's happening. There are young people that are still willing to kind of like work and deal within these processes. So the push actually could come from within country and also from external forces as well. So I guess that's the way that we could use this resolution. It's really hard. I don't have like a concrete answer or like concrete advice because there's very different players and like challenges in the different like settings that we have. But I guess the participation when it comes to decision making can happen at different phases and different levels. Yeah, I that's really a very vague answer for your question, but I'm sure you might have your own thoughts as well in terms of how you think participation could happen in that current context. Maybe Ajmal have some reflections as well, especially working within the context that you're in now, remotely. So yeah, I'd be happy to kind of hear your thoughts around this as well. Hashim, if you have any reflections as well after the discussion that we've had now. Yeah, I'm sorry if I don't have like a really concrete answer. It's very, it's difficult, but there is a lot of opportunities in terms of, you know, trying to think innovatively in how young people can engage. If not decision making, it could be in different aspects. For instance, I'm sorry, I keep talking, but like the young people have pushed for the agenda and they weren't at the decision making table yet. For instance, for the YPS resolution, but it came from a consolidated effort of advocacy on different angles, coming from, let's say, the grassroots level, going to their government, or some young people that go directly to the decision makers. So it comes from different angles, and it's more of like, how do you strategically work within the context that you're in? Ajmal, do you have anything that you could share as well in terms of participation in
Yes.
decision making?
Yeah, thank you, Erika. So one of the reasons that we have organized this today's discussion is we know that what's happening in Afghanistan and also the challenges that the youth face, especially in the past few years. And I think the reason that we want this issue because youth, most of the time, they do not need to depend on their national action plans, like on their government. So they should have their own voice. They should have to be in contact with the policymakers using these agendas. So one of the reasons that we want to have this discussion is that youth and young people from Afghanistan, they have contributed a lot to the peace processes, to the different level of decision making in Afghanistan. So I think using these YPS agenda to advocate for the youth and also for the challenges that youth faces in the current context. So this is really important that youth should know how they can use these platforms. They have to well prepare to know different level of channels and also to use these platforms in a way to engage with decision making process to address the challenges from young people. I know it's not easy the way that it is, but if you can go and check our website, we have done many research. We have worked with the young people. We have initiated the Afghan annual youth representative program, which was in the story of Afghanistan. We were selecting one youth representative who were sharing the challenges and demands of Afghan youth on international platforms. So these are all somehow the efforts of young people from Afghanistan who contributed. So still, even though that there are some challenges, some changes in the past 3 years, but still there are ways to engage with the policymakers through these agendas and through learning and strengthening our own understanding.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your thoughts and what you do with your organization and also what you have done for the young generation, especially in Afghanistan. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have another question as well. If we have time, I would like to ask it.
Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll have some in the chat as well. Go ahead, Hashim.
Okay. So, for example, if I have some good plans, agendas at national and international level, in order to help young generation. So, will UNSC or YPS, is there any chance that they help me to fund it or provide any sort of budget for me?
Rika? Okay.
Yeah,
I
go
will
ahead,
go
Ajmal.
first, maybe.
Yeah.
There are different organizations who are working on international levels, even though their priority might have been changed for the past 3 years. But again, depending on the area and the context of work, knowing that what can be something as a priority for them, finding networks with them, communicating with them, and also finding some ways to bring up the issues, the challenges of young people from the work that, for example, you're doing with the young people in Afghanistan. So there are still a few opportunities, few fundings in this area. I don't say that it might be perfectly aligned to what, for example, toward youth peace and security, especially in the current context, because there are other priorities in Afghanistan currently. But I think if you start building those connection and connecting with these organizations and finding ways to network with them, to share some research, some case studies from Afghanistan, and I think then you will find ways to get fundings. I can share you some websites that you can continuously search and attend their events. But again, this is something I mentioned that now the priority for Afghanistan might be not just specifically for youth peace and security, but as a side of other priorities, this can be also something that most of the organization might want to continue funding.
That would be great. I would really be grateful if you share those websites with me. And these were my questions. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, Hashim. Thank you so much, Ajmal.
Thank you, Rika.
Yeah, anyone else? Oh, so we have a question in the chat from Samaya. As a young Afghan woman, I've seen firsthand how conflict affects youth. How can we ensure that UNSCR 2250 translates into real opportunities for young people in conflict zones, not just policies on papers? So yeah, that's always the tricky part in terms of actual implementation. But I think Ajmal gave like really good answers in terms of the different mechanisms and initiatives that could be done that's youth-led and youth-initiated. And I think that kind of concrete recognition to include Afghan women is really important as well. And I think Ajmal has a few initiatives as well that's focused on like young Afghan women. So I think I'll hand over to you in case you'd like to share or add anything to answer the question.
Yeah, thank you, Erika. I think for everyone who have joined this session, I think you might still need to go and do some research on the YPS, on some of the organizations who have been active in Afghanistan, and then we might have some other opportunities, as I mentioned previously, that we have had a few programs in the past. We had research papers on youth peace and security in the context of Afghanistan. We have had the annual Afghan Youth Representative to the United Nations program, which we are resuming that program this year. And there are some other opportunities that you can continuously look through. For example, some of the UN platforms, UN Youth Envoy Office, some other organizations like UNDP, UNFPA. There are different organizations who might not have maybe some funding opportunity directly, but there are some opportunities that you can connect online through most through their events, and then you can contribute to share your knowledge, you can your case studies, and of course, in the current context, if it's not possible in terms of like physical presence in most of the activities, but you can always continuously search, for example, for UN volunteer programs and to search about the UNAMO's work in Afghanistan currently. It might not it might be so different from the past 3 years after the collapse of Afghan government, but still there might be some opportunities in the UN that you can continuously search their website, follow their social media accounts, and to see how they are engaging with youth, what are some platforms, what are some opportunities that you can engage with.
I think there are some
Okay.
few more questions for you, Ajmal.
Yeah, after these sessions, we will definitely share the recording, the website, the slides, and also the website of our organization. I will also share a contact email with you that if you have any question, you want to connect and to discuss anything, you can always reach out to us. And also regarding the WhatsApp group, you can always reach out to us through email. And if you have any question, if you want to engage, we will definitely will have some other opportunities related to YPS, youth peace and security, and some research papers. You will be hearing back from us. So since it's also, I think the time passes after, so we will take one last question from Wase Wahdat, and then we'll close the session. Mr. Wase, over to you.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and I hope you're all doing well. One thing that I should say, thank you, Erica, for your time and sharing your insights. It was very rich, and I've enjoyed it through the entire session. Ajmal Jan, I have a question for you. Is there the requirement for the youth representative the same as the previous years, or there has been some changes? Because you have mentioned
Yeah.
it's been 5 days that the application might be open. So
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. We will be opening the call for application in the next 4 days. There are some changes, of course, because the past 3 years the program was paused because of the changes and because of the priorities for Afghanistan. So still, like, we are trying to see how we can keep the like effectiveness of that program same as the previous years, and in terms of like the guideline for like participation and everything. So you can keep checking on our website and social media pages. In the next 4 days, we will announce and we will share those guidelines. So hopefully, even though that this is just an opportunity for one representative, but there will be lots of other opportunities that that youth representative will connect and to have the voices and concerns, and will have some consultation with the youth in Afghanistan to take that conversations to the decision makers, and also to take those conversation in a priority for policymakers. Thank you so much. Because I don't wanna, Erica, if you have anything for the closing, because like I might feel a bit dizzy after this, but
No,
uh,
nothing on my end. I'll share my LinkedIn in the chat just in case anyone would like to connect and have like any follow-up questions. But yeah, Ajmal would be your focal point for any concrete initiatives that's happening. So yeah, thank you, and I'm really honored to be part of this discussion. So thank you.
thank you so much, Erika, for guiding us on this important discussion, an important topic. I know it's not easy, especially in the current context of Afghanistan. For the participant who joined today, there might have lots of questions because in the context of Afghanistan, even though in the past few years there were lots of other priorities, there were lots of other struggles for the young people, that it was hard for them to connect with the government because there was like uh, active, even though that the youth had played an important role in the peace process and decision-making process, and they are still showing their strength by standing up for their right, for standing up for their right that they want to have a sustainable peace. So hopefully, these agendas, these discussions, and this kind of opportunities would give them more ways to continue their advocacy and their work. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Erika. And we definitely keep in touch. If the participants have any question, we will reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ajmal. Thank you, everyone.